Imagine every conversation you have is a chess game, where you don't always make your own move. You sense something's off. The other person's words sound convincing, but inside, a knot of doubt lurks. Why did you do something you normally wouldn't? Who's really running the show? It turns out manipulators aren't just movie villains. They live among us, at work, in friendships, in family, and even in relationships. But how can you recognize these hidden tricks, concealed behind smiles and persuasion? And most importantly, can you defend yourself against them without becoming cold strategist yourself? Today, we'll explore the most cunning manipulation techniques and learn to spot them from miles away, without losing your cool. What is manipulation and why do we fall for it? Manipulation is an attempt to indirectly or covertly influence your behavior, forcing you to make a decision that benefits the manipulator rather than you. But why do most of us succumb to such influences? It turns out that manipulation is successful because we are social creatures, who constantly seek approval, security, and understanding. Psychologist Robert Cialdini, author of the classic book Influence, The Psychology of Influence, identified 6 universal principles that manipulators use constantly: reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, likability, authority, and scarcity. In short, we tend to reciprocate favors, keep our promises, be guided by the behavior of others, trust those we like, defer to authority figures, and be afraid of missing out. But what if someone uses these principles not for mutual benefit, but to control you? One of the simplest examples is a flattering remark followed by a request. If you say no, you feel guilty because you've just been complimented. Or, say, a colleague suggests, the whole team does it this way, and group pressure forces you to agree. How can you avoid getting caught if this is ingrained in our nature? Invisible signals of manipulation. This is where the most interesting point comes in. Manipulation rarely plays on logic. Its weapon is emotion. It works through fear, guilt, pity, and pride. Often, manipulators don't say it outright, they play on subtleties. For example, you might encounter phrases like, "I thought you'd support me, you've disappointed me," or "I've done so much for you." These are what psychologists call emotional leverage. They sound innocent, but they contain a hidden ultimatum. If you don't do this, I'll suffer. One manipulation technique is gaslighting. This is when you're forced to doubt your own perception of reality. You recall how things were, and are told, "You misunderstood, that's not true." Gradually, you begin to believe that the problem is on your end. How to recognize manipulations? The first and foremost sign is a persistent feeling of discomfort or guilt. After interacting with the person, if you regularly ask yourself, "Why did I do this when I didn't mean to?" you should be wary. The second sign is a lack of consistency between words and actions. For example, someone promises to help but always makes excuses, or they constantly change the terms of the agreement without your consent. The third sign is an attempt to evoke emotions in you that are inappropriate for the situation. For example, excessive dramatization, accusations, or attempts to evoke pity. Finally, pay attention to the frequency of such occurrences. 1 or 2 instances may be random, but systematic repetition is a warning sign. How manipulation affects the brain. Our brains are wired to make quick decisions to save energy, especially in stressful situations. Manipulators exploit this, forcing us to act impulsively. Interestingly, neuroscientists have found that when people are put under pressure, the amygdala, the center for fear and emotion, is activated, inhibiting the area responsible for rational thinking. Therefore, if you feel emotionally under pressure, it's important to consciously pause. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Or what is my emotional state right now? This is the first step to taking control. Practical defense techniques. Now that we know how to recognize manipulation, the most important thing is how to avoid falling victim to it. Here are some effective techniques. 1. Conscious pause. When you feel pressured, don't respond right away. Say, "I'll think about it," or "Let's come back to this later." This will give your brain time to process rationally. 2. Asking questions. Manipulators often avoid specifics. Ask, "Why do you think I should do this?" Or "What are my options?" Explanations often cause them to confuse or reveal their true motives. 3. Clear boundaries. Learn to say no without excuses. For example, "I can't do that." The less you explain, the less opportunity there is for manipulation. 4. Emotional introspection. Monitor your emotions during the conversation. Feeling guilty, afraid, or rushed is a warning sign. When a manipulator is close, in the family or at work. It's especially difficult when manipulation is happening all around you at home or at work. Gaslighting, the technique we discussed, or shifting blame is often used here. How can you avoid losing yourself? Keeping a journal of your emotions and events is very helpful. It will help you see patterns objectively. Sometimes, for protection, you need to learn to ask for help from others, psychologists, colleagues, friends. And another important point, be honest with yourself. Manipulation often works when a person is unsure of their own boundaries and values. A case from life. Meet Katya. She once noticed that after interacting with a colleague, she felt tired and angry. Even though the work wasn't difficult, she decided to test her feelings and began recording conversations and her reactions. It turned out that her colleague was constantly forgetting promises and suddenly changing plans at the last minute, forcing Katya to cover his responsibilities. Each time, he said, she's the only one who can help. Katya learned to say no without explanation and set boundaries, and the relationship became less toxic. Final results and inspiration. Manipulation isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's simply a habit of dishonest communication. But when you learn to see it in its masks, you can not only defend yourself, but also maintain your freedom and confidence. It's important to remember, no one is obligated to control you without your consent. And the strongest shield against manipulation is understanding, awareness, and self-honesty. If you enjoyed this video and want to delve deeper into the psychology of influence and communication, subscribe, like, and share your stories in the comments. Together, we'll learn to recognize manipulation and build healthy relationships. Thanks for watching, and see you in new videos. Leave a comment on what topics you'd like to see on this channel.